and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. This is Irreverent, Faith and Current Affairs.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Irreverent, Faith and Current Affairs with me, Jamie Franklin. It's good to be with you today. Now, for viewers of this podcast, I must apologise. I'm wearing a t-shirt today because it's quite a warm day and I've had no real need to put my clerical clothes on. I sort of feel like it was all right because I did a podcast with Professor Patrick Deenan, which came out this week, and he was wearing a t-shirt, and he's quite a respectable person. So I think maybe, the occasional podcast in a t-shirt is okay. But apologise if you like to see me in my clericals. I was going to be joined by Thomas Pelham today, but he's not here yet, and I kind of need to get on with this podcast. So I've decided to start it. He might join me at some point during it, but he's not here yet. He's been delayed. So I'm going to go for it. Tom might come along at some point. If he does, that'd be great. If not, you just have to deal with me today. It's a little bit of a tighter schedule this week because I'm going away in the middle of the week, which just puts a little bit of pressure on the time for the podcast. But hopefully this will still be a good episode anyway. Well, it's Irreverent. There are a couple of notices just to begin with. I've been speaking about the March for Life, which is coming up on Saturday, September the 2nd. And we're going to have an Irreverent meetup. I'll be there. The other two won't. They're busy. They're busy vicars on the Saturday, but I'll be there. So if anyone wants to come along to the March for Life and meet me and hopefully some other listeners, please do join us Saturday, the 2nd of September. We're going to be meeting at the Emmanuel Centre, which is where the whole thing kicks off. And we have arranged a rallying point at the Voice for Justice stand, which is, I'm told, on the ground floor of the Emmanuel Centre. We're going to meet there about 10:30 a.m. So that's the idea. I think what I'll do is I'll make sure I've got my Telegram group all sorted out on my phone so that I can communicate via Telegram. So if you're coming and you'd like to stay updated, please do get on our Telegram group, which you can find at t.me/irreverentpod. But that would be a really good event coming to the March for Life, where we can join with others who are speaking in favour of and defence of the life of the unborn, and trying to offer people an alternative to the practice of abortion. So that's coming up, and I hope to meet some people there. I know some people are coming. I've got no idea how many really, but there we go. I wanted to just say thank you to people who have bought us coffees recently. I don't always do this, but it's good to occasionally read out some of the messages people leave us on there. So thank you. Here are some of them. Good to hear 3 based clergymen. I listened to you whilst walking the dog. He's so happy, and so am I. Well, I don't know if he's happy because he's listening to us, though. I don't think dogs really can understand our podcast as much as I like dogs. Joe says, discovered you during the dark days, and I continue to appreciate and enjoy your theologically undergirded conversations. You make me smile too. Very good. Thanks to Giles. Thanks to Richard. An unfailingly thoughtful discussion each week of matters of significance to people of faith. Someone else who's a priest says, hi to you all, been listening avidly each week for the past few weeks, loving what you're saying and the faithful commitment to say what has historically been orthodox throughout the Christian faith down the years. Keep up the good work. It's great to hear an apologetic of the Christian faith. Well, thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Another one here. Thanks, Jamie, Tom, and Daniel, for your encouragement. It literally helps restore my faith each week. Hope to meet some or all of you at the March for Life. Oh, that's good. Well, look forward to meeting you there. Joe Blogs. I assume that's not your real name. So thanks to everyone who's bought us coffees recently. We really do appreciate that. We're going to be talking about a few things this week, but we like to begin with a bit of a Bible reading. And Tom and I decided last week that we'd have a kind of go through a thematic, well, not thematic actually. That's not what I mean at all. Systematically go through a book of the Bible when we didn't have anything else specifically on our minds. So today, I'm just going to read a section out from the book of Acts. We did the first part of the book of Acts last week. I'm going to read the next section out now. And to be honest, I haven't prepared this. Honesty is a good policy, isn't it? So I know it's about the ascension, but let's read it and maybe I'll make some comments and maybe the Holy Spirit might guide me to say something that's relevant to the topic of this week's podcast. First, let's say a prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive them who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. We're slipping out in and out of the BCP version of the Lord's Prayer. It must be very confusing to people. Apologize about that. There really should be some consistency. Anyway, the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 6. So when they had come together, they asked him, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? He said to them, it is not for you to know times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. When he had said these things, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. And while they were gazing into heaven, as he went, behold, two men stood by them in white robes and said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into heaven? This Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven. So there we are. That's the account of the ascension, which is written at the beginning of the book of Acts. So this is when Jesus appeared to the disciples after his resurrection, and just before he went up into heaven, and it has an account of that happening as well, which is what the word ascension means. Now, what do we want to say here? He's just promised the gift of the Holy Spirit, which accounts for the question that they ask, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? And then he says, it's not for you to know this, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. That's looking forward to the Feast of Pentecost, or to the event of Pentecost, which we celebrate the Feast of Pentecost, which is coming up in the second chapter of Acts. You will receive power to be witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria to the ends of the earth. So this is a description of the way the gospel goes forth from the kind of epicenter of the ministry of Christ in Jerusalem to all the nations of the earth. And of course, that's what we see happening in the book of Acts, and historically the gospel going out from that one place and going out to all cultures, all nations, all lands, and all around the world. And that process, I suppose you could say, continues today as billions of people know the name of Christ and have received that witness and now believe in the gospel. And, I suppose it's probably worth thinking about that for a minute, the way that this small group of people were able to go out, preach the gospel, and for the gospel to take root in all nations and lands on the basis of this man who they claimed had risen from the dead. I suppose it's something for skeptics to ponder whether this is plausibly the case that these people were lying, or whether they were deluded, or whether they could really have achieved this without this being true and without the power of God being real, and so on and so forth. And then the ascension itself, as they were looking on, he was lifted up and a cloud took him out of their sight. Now, what does that, I suppose maybe it's a trivial question, but sort of occurs to me to ask, in what sense was he lifted up? Was he literally lifted up into the sky and then a cloud took him? Which is that lifting up? Does that mean, is that a kind of metaphorical way of talking about something which is very hard to describe with literal language? I don't know. But whatever happened, Christ went to be with God the Father. He went to sit down at the right hand of God and to rule and reign over all creation in heaven, which is where he came from in the first place. So the way we understand this theologically is that the Holy Spirit is now the presence of God in the world. The Holy Spirit was given to the church as the presence of God, with the presence of God in Christ, locally in the incarnation being transferred, if you like, to heaven. But we'll probably talk about that a bit more when we talk about Pentecost. So Christ goes away, sends his Holy Spirit on the church to be the presence of God in the church and in the world now. And then you get these two people who are sort of angels who are who say, when they predict Christ's second coming. So there's also that there. This Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven. So in the same way that he left, he will come again. So there's the second coming there as well. So there we go. What's the theological significance of the ascension? It's a really, really good question. I suppose it's about Christ ascending into heaven, being the Lord of all creation, Christ leaving this world so that it wouldn't just be him and everyone sort of gathered around one individual, but that the church could be the sort of incarnate presence of God in the world through the presence of the Holy Spirit. So I think that's significant there in the incarnation. Also, I suppose you could say that the incarnation is about Christ being a forerunner. So as Christ goes up into heaven, as Christ is raised from the dead, so we will be raised from the dead. As Christ goes to heaven to be with God, so we will go. We will go in the same way, in the same manner, to be with God, and to live with him forever. So it's kind of about Christ going first, if you like. So there's all that kind of stuff. It's a very rich passage. I'm not sure what it's got to do with the stories that I've selected to talk about today, but maybe something will come up. Anyway, there's a bit of scripture to just bring something edifying. Drop my pencil. Something edifying in the beginning. Now I'm just going to take a slurp of coffee out of my amazing Irreverent coffee mug, which you can buy on our website, by the way, irreverentpod.com. This isn't grifting. You know, people asked for this. I've just received a message from Tom saying that he is indeed coming, so he may be here in a minute to join. So I won't. I'll wait. I'll wait and then discuss stories. But we're going to, just to say, if you're interested, what we'll be discussing today, we're going to talk about the Church of England and the pronouncements that the bishops made about the Women's World Cup. That will be an interesting thing to talk about. Apparently, the lower birth rate in the UK that has just been spoken about is good for the planet, according to one scientific expert. And we're also going to talk about Jonathan Van Tam, who's just been given a job with Moderna, having been a government advisor, and the slightly sort of controversial issue of there being a sort of revolving door between the Big Pharma and governments around the world. It's not a good thing. And then we've got lots of really interesting emails as well. So that's all to come. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Tom Pelham.
Hello.
Not a special guest, but a special host. How are things going?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Jay. Really well.
You're looking relaxed.
Thanks. Yeah. It's been a bit of a hard work morning. I took my son. He's learned to ride a bike. Right. I think I mentioned last week. And I took him to a local trail called the Cuckoo Trail, which runs on an old railway line.
Right.
And he cycled a long way, actually. Did really well.
Nice. Very good. Very good.
Didn't cycle back. He then decided he didn't want to cycle back in that sort of in the way of a 2-year-old. Yeah. And so I had to carry him back. So that was but still, we found a nice cafe in the field.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, children are very capricious. Well, listen, Tom, we don't have much time, do we? Because you need to go quite soon. Well, in about 45 minutes, you say. So let's talk about the stories. You've come just in time. Now, Tom, I don't know whether you've seen, but Daniel French. I don't. You're not really on Twitter, are you? But Daniel French, our other co-host, he's been stirring the pot, as it were, on Twitter. He tweeted out a story from the Times, and he wrote, "If I were a Christian in Saudi Arabia or in the underground church in China, I'm not sure how I'd feel about this." And the title of the article says, "Skip worship and pray for the Lionesses, says church." Apparently worshippers in the Church of England have been given the blessing from the bishops to not go to church, to change their service times, and to watch the Women's Football World Cup instead. Now, there's some quotes from the Libby Lane, who is the Bishop of Derby, who is the church's spokeswoman, on sport. She said, "I know lots of people want to..."
It's not even a word, is it? I'm sorry. Anyway, okay.
Spokeswoman. Spokesperson.
It's not English.
At least she's actually, you know what, Tom? At least she's actually being quoted herself. So many of these bishops, they have their sort of anonymous spokesperson. It's pathetic. Yeah. That is fine from the Church of England's point of view to watch the match. Others will prefer to go to church and avoid...
Hang on. I mean, does she get to rule on the Church of England as a spokesperson? Does she just get to say, you know what, that's fine?
Well, because
the Church of England,
she's in charge of sport, isn't she?
So she just gets to make sweeping statements. It's fine not to go to church, play sport instead, or watch sport. I don't know.
Is that so? Do you think that
that's fine from the Church of England's point of view? That's
actually, because there was this big furore afterwards. Oh, she didn't really say people could miss church. She was just saying that people, could go to church at a different time. Do you think that's what she was saying, or do you think that she's actually saying, yeah, just don't go to church this week, it's fine, you can watch
I think she's probably not... I think she'd probably be best not saying anything at all. It's one of those points where, does it really need a statement from the church? I mean, and then if you are going to speak, you have to be really clear about what's sort of church policy, what's your own personal policy. So if she said, that's fine from my point of view, well, no one could really complain. I mean, it'd be a bit weird. I wouldn't say that. But if, the Church of England's point of view, it's quite a claim, isn't it? And
I believe it says something about that in the 39 articles, isn't it? Should the Women's World Cup team proceed to
it's in canon law,
upon a Sunday morn,
the church services should be moved.
Should be moved or shortened. Should we read some of the responses from some of the people?
Well, I think the point being that she does sort of say later, church services happen at different times and different places, so people can choose one that's right for them. And then it says whatever they decide to do. So presumably she's offered a couple of options, really, hasn't she? She's offered miss it completely, find a different service in a different place or a different time, whatever you decide to do. We should be proud, she says, of the Lionesses.
Whether you receive the life-giving sacrament of the Holy Eucharist or not, we can at least all agree that the Lionesses are wonderful and that we should be very, very proud of this team of women who have made it to the Women's World Cup final, which is such an achievement, Tom, such an achievement. All Saints in Hampton, southwest London, told worshippers, we can't wait to watch on Sunday. Join us to watch on the big screens. The Reverend Andrew Downs, Vicar of St Mary's, Sunbury-on-Thames, sounds like a nice place, said, we are shortening our main morning Eucharist and then live streaming the game with bacon rolls and fish. I wonder how they're shortening.
It's quite exclusive of our Jewish brethren, isn't it? And Islamic brethren. Anyway.
What are they leaving out, Tom, though? Are they leaving out, the reception of the Eucharist or, the final hymn? Are they leaving out the consecration?
You can do a perfect. I mean, if you drop 2 hymns, you could do a perfectly, reasonable Eucharist in sort of 40 minutes, couldn't you?
Yeah, well, you could drop all the hymns, couldn't you? You could drop all the hymns. You could drop the sermon. You could say it all really quickly.
I mean, like Mark Chapman.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you do it. You probably do it really quickly, I can imagine.
I don't.
I bet you do. I bet you.
I read out the entirety of the third exhortation quite regularly at my 8 o'clock PCPs.
Well, yeah, that would take some time. The Reverend Carol Atkins said that her church in Reading has swapped our service for a community watch of the final. There we go. That
sounds like a good point of, she's obviously carefully fulfilling her charitable commitments for the PCC there of promoting Christianity. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there we go, Tom. I mean, look, I have to say, can I just say this? I feel it's difficult because it's like you're in a trap, isn't it? Obviously, as priests, we want to be promoting the gospel and actually doing our job, which is, a large part of that, at least, is about taking services, preaching, celebrating the sacrament of the Eucharist or the Mass or whatever you want to call it. That's kind of our job, isn't it? So I think to me, it's kind of a given that, sporting commitments sort of come second. So there's that. On the other hand, the whole women's football thing, I know we've talked about this before, but to me, it feels very, very artificial.
But do you know what? The biggest thing I saw about this, and I mean, I don't really care about men's football other than to follow vaguely the fact that Harry Kane's doing much better now.
You don't even like football.
He's playing for a sensible team.
You're sending me these what are they called? Kind of this football banter now, which is you've never even mentioned football before, and now Harry Kane's left Tottenham. Now you send me these messages, which are like these banterous digs about Harry Kane being better now he's left Spurs. But anyways,
well,
I have some kind of telepathic sense about what will
wind you up. Yeah. So he did score quite a few goals, didn't he?
I don't know. Let's look.
Anyway,
I'm happy for Harry. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
What's the point you're going to make? Come on.
The thing is, how many? And it's this sort of idea that the men's World Cup, the women's World Cup are roughly equivalent. And I have no idea. It's not ridiculous. I mean, they're playing the same game with the same rules, etc.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, it depends what you mean by equivalent.
So, yeah, well, exactly. It does.
They both use the ball.
They both use the ball. There are 11 players aside, etc. They're talented sportsmen and women. Let's not forget that. They are talented. And they're keen and all of that sort of stuff. But the problem is with directly making any sort of assumption that the Women's World Cup is sort of equivalent to the men's is that of the teams in the world, sort of at that level, there are only about sort of 10, 20 maybe that are kind of actually full-time professional, fully equipped women's football teams, aren't there? It's the rest of the world. It's kind of a part-time, amateur football, which is nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think most sport would be better if it was amateur. Sport was better before it became professionalized. Cricket, rugby, all of them better before they became professionalized. But in my opinion, you had the great sort of sportsmen who played played rugby and cricket. I can't remember the last one who did that professionally. Both of them, cricket in the summer, rugby in the winter. The problem with it, of course, is that only rich people can really afford to do it because they need to have some sort of sponsorship. So you effectively become professional anyway. But so we're talking about a Women's World Cup of about be generous and say 20 teams that are fully equipped and prepared and trained and full-time athletes, and the rest of them are not. So you end up padding out the group stages of people who just whack, balls past, because there's an obvious difference there. Whereas the Men's World Cup, actually every single stage is competitive, isn't it? Every single bit is competitive. There's no doubt about it. Every single country in the world has a professional, I think, probably male football team, and it's just a different. It's a different.
What about the Vatican City?
They ought to, aren't they? We had this discussion before.
On it. I think Pope Francis is the kit man.
I reckon he'd be a really dirty football player. He'd be hacking everyone, passing the ball to convicted child offenders, and claiming that. Claiming that Christ
podcast not happy right now.
I know. Sorry.
Can I raise a point here, Tom?
Go on.
About this whole thing. I agree with what you've said. Obviously, the standard of women's football is obviously nowhere near as high, even sort of analogously to men's football. But I have watched the rise, if you like, of women's football over the last few years, and I think that it is clearly part of a political agenda. Now, I find it hard to articulate what the agenda actually is. I'll be honest, but I think it's encapsulated in. We'll watch a clip in a minute where somebody says something like this. But it's this thing about, we have to set this example to young girls that they can play football if they want to, and that they can be like these women that they're watching on TV. Now, look, I've got no problem with women playing football, girls playing football. My daughter is currently going to a football club. I mean, she's only 3 or 2.5, but she plays football on Wednesday mornings, and I've got no problem with it. So per se, I just have a problem with I think it's the image of femininity that is being promoted through it, which is like, this is what it is to be a real woman, to play a sport which is it's a male dominated sport, and in order to be a real woman, you have to enter this masculine arena and to play competitive sport in the way that men do, and that this has to be granted an equivalence. Otherwise, the people who refuse to are being sexist or something like that. How would it be? I was watching this clip thinking, well, how would it be if we had people on TV saying we need more depictions of women being mothers and stay-at-home housewives, so that young girls can look at that and think, wow, that's a great life, and that's what I want to be. Or mothers sitting around reading the Bible to their children and praying.
Those are actively discouraged, aren't they? So the Advertising Standards Authority will turn down adverts that have these outdated stereotypes of the man being the breadwinner, the woman raising a family, the nuclear family. We saw a bit of that in the news from Sadiq Khan, didn't we? There was this advertising agency. There's a picture of a London family walking alongside the Thames. It looked like South Bank to me. And
I think it was the North Bank. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Was the eye was in the background, wasn't it? So maybe it was North Bank. And on the embankment, and the caption was something like, "This is not to be used as an example of something not to be used as a typical London family."
That was something Sadiq Khan wrote, was it?
Well, it's something that his advertising agency, the City of London, I mean, I don't know if he personally wrote it, but it does show the prevailing ethos behind that. He's responsible for that ethos. That white nuclear family, 2 parents, 2 kids, boy and a girl, is not London. It's not to be used to advertise London. Presumably, it'd be fine if they were a gay white family. I presume.
Oh yeah, that would have been
that would have been okay. That's London. Or of course, if they're and it's quite funny if mixed race family, because if you watch television these days, every single advert has a mixed race family in it, doesn't it? I don't. Mixed race families are a thing, and
is that the right term? I'm just trying to think.
I just don't know. Are we going to be called
multiracial
families? Probably mixed race. I don't really know.
Biracial? I'm not really sure.
I don't have any problem with adverts. Actually, I don't really watch television, so it doesn't affect me in any real way. But race is not something which sort of worries me too much. But the fact is that the sort of straightforward nuclear family is being Caucasian is being deliberately turned into something which is not shown, not seen. It's not a role model that our children should live up to. And actually, I think this is really hard because levels of divorce are really high and going higher, and levels of the white lads are among the most underachieving people, and they don't see positive depictions of either being male or being white in the press ever.
It's about norms, isn't it? It's about what you want to project to the world in order to make people look at it and think, well, that's normal. And then if you don't see, like I was just saying, like women being orientated around the home, you lose a sense of the normality of that and the goodness of that. And you think, well, in order for me to be a proper woman, I have to be like these, lionesses, like taking their shirts off and like screaming and running around, like punching the air and with their like veins bulging out of their neck. Like, this is going to sound somewhat, probably somewhat,
sexist?
Maybe, but I don't like the sight of women screaming and their veins bulging out of their neck. I find that to be a deeply unappealing look for women. Can I share this other tweet from Daniel?
I like that. I've seen it.
After he did the first one, he did another one, stirring the pot even more.
Has he used an AI image for this? I wonder.
I don't know.
It's the sort of thing, doesn't it?
But let me read it out. I have this feeling that if I were operating in London or a busy city, which is not, putting a post like this with a finger down would be like throwing a blooded steak in the shark waters to young constituents who relish a Reverend pod and are desperately looking for a church that makes demands on them. And it's a picture of some people holding a World Cup, and it says, Miss Mass, attending Mass is an obligation. So if you decided to watch football instead of attending Mass, then you will need to make your confession. I feel like that should have the word sir on the end of it. Then you will need to make your confession, sir. Forget the
Monday
cup.
The 21st, 5 p.m. Tuesday the 22nd, 6 p.m.
Forget the cup. Hang on. Forget the cup. Instead, seek the chalice of everlasting salvation. I like it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good,
isn't it, Tom? And it's a very good theology implied there as well. All of it, every single word.
I mean, I'm not certain about that, but
but would you say attending Mass is an obligation?
Attending Holy Communion is not an obligation. No.
It's not an obligation?
No.
You don't think so?
Well, so otherwise you turn it into sort of work, don't you?
No, I suppose it depends what you mean by an obligation.
Yeah, I mean, you could be a Christian without receiving communion regularly, weekly. I would say, I mean, the Church of England, there's an obligation in the Church of England to take it, I think, twice a year, isn't there? Christmas and Easter.
Right, okay.
I think that's the only obligation.
But attending some observance.
Oh yeah.
On a Sunday.
To worship on a Sunday. If you don't worship on a Sunday, then your Sunday will never be worshipped, will it? You just sometimes set aside for the Lord on a Sunday is helpful. I mean, do you know what? If people said to me, "Oh, I'm coming to you 8:00, Tom, because I want to watch the match at 11," I'd have blinked at them in surprise because until yesterday, I don't know, I didn't really realize there was a World Cup going on. But kind of like, oh, there's World Cup. I think I first became aware of it when they beat someone, Australia.
I mean, to be honest, I only really know.
A couple of weeks ago.
I have to prepare for this podcast.
But anyway, if they said that to me, I'd be like, yeah, fair enough. Come at 8:00. On my 9 o'clock, actually. That's no problem. Then you can get home in time for your 11 o'clock. Or
but would you not say to more spiritually mature parishioners, you'd want to say, okay, well, it's fine, if you want to do that, but just make sure that your priority, it's not just about coming to church, but it's about making sure that your heart and your mind is focused on worshiping the Lord and being a disciple of Christ.
I think you're right, yeah.
And making sure that it doesn't detract from that, because you don't want to be at church and then be rushing off, thinking, oh, well, I've got to go and watch the World Cup after I finish this. You want to be focused on what you're doing, don't you? And I know not everyone's in a place where they can receive such a message, but that's the kind of thing I think you'd be wanting to say to people.
Yeah.
So
you can have fun on a Sunday. The Sunday should be the day that you, or it's a good day at least, to set aside as
it's a good day, Sunday.
Set aside as worship and and holding God in pride of place.
Should we listen to this race row that has apparently broken out as a result of the unifying event of the Women's World Cup? This is just inevitable, isn't it? I mean, yeah. So who's this person who's done this? Let's just see.
Sky News panelist.
Yeah, it's on Sky News. So it's all, and I was expecting a debate, but there wasn't one. So
about this picture here, what jumps out of you is...
So this is a picture of the Women's World Cup team.
This doesn't sort of represent diverse Britain. It's all these blonde, blue-eyed girls.
Entrepreneur Wilfred Emmanuel Jones.
And, I wish them well, but I do think we need to ask ourselves questions.
It's a good point, actually. The Women's World Cup players they're all blonde with blue eyes, aren't they? Some of them are quite attractive. I mean, not that I've been looking, but one can't fail to notice.
As long as they're not bulging their veins. Anyway,
yeah, that's not attractive. But yeah,
I think someone made the point there are three black ladies in the squad, aren't there not?
Yeah, so I got this here. So 13% of the Lionesses are black, which is 3 of 23, which is 3 times more than the wider population, which apparently in the 2021 census, it was 4.2% black in...
Well, it's like this, the push for racial diversity in the church, isn't it? Where and Calvin Robinson passionately made the point that, the percentage of black vicars might be slightly under the sort of overall sort of diversity of the population, but it's in the Church of England at least. I mean, obviously not in the Pentecostal church or something. But if we're making, actually you don't need 30% or 50% of them to be black. That'd be well over the.
You'd find it really hard to find that many black people in the UK who want to be vicars.
I'm still massively in favour of bringing black vicars over from Africa,
from Nigeria, and
from Bible believing churches and planting them into here, but that's not what they want. But anyway,
should we carry on with this? Let's listen to more of this.
About why is it that we've got it has a lack of diversity?
They're playing sport at an elite level, and they are from Britain, and they're women.
It doesn't make any difference.
Those are all true. After a fashion, aren't they? I mean, I'm not sure what the word elite means in this context, but they are all women, and they are all in Britain. Sport. They're from Britain, and they're playing sport, so that's all true.
But I mean, what we have here is sort of intersection of different rights. When we discovered that the race rights trump sex rights, don't they? I mean, this is kind of intersectionality, isn't it? It's a kind of critical theory.
Yeah, it's all that kind of thing. It's that they can't just be the best football players.
No, of course not.
Players. They have to be representative of the population.
Presumably, this chat would prefer them to be not as good and more diverse. I mean, presumably that's the only thing you can assume.
I think so. But yeah, let's listen to the end of it.
If the whole idea behind this is going to encourage more women to go and into the sport, you need some sort of representation there to say whatever background you come from, you could get to this sort of level.
Because
Britain doesn't look like that.
Yeah, and it's so important when you speak to...
Britain doesn't look like that, but it does though, doesn't it? In fact, it actually looks more white than that. That's the point that this tweeter is.
But the thing is that all of these people live in cities.
Right.
That'd be the issue where the London is much more than 3% or 13% black, isn't it?
Mm.
If you lived in London, probably you see more like, I think it's 20% or something. So you might look at the team and think, wow, they're not 5 black players on the team rather than just 3. But they don't know that actually it's not quite so diverse outside of London. I don't think people in London have any understanding of what life is like outside of London. It's like a separate city-state.
It's a different country, isn't it? And do you see what I mean about this thing about it being used as a vehicle of social change? I mean, this conversation just confirms it, doesn't it? It's like, well, this is good because it's helping girls to see, oh, you can be a professional football player if you want to be, but it might not be doing that for black girls. So we need to have more black women doing it. So it's not about sport, is it? It's about what it's doing in society.
It's quite patronising towards black people in a sense, isn't it? Because I mean, I don't really hold that you need role models to show you that you can do something. I don't really see how
do they need to be the same race as you?
Well, do they need to be the same race, or do they even need to be the same sex?
Yeah.
Can I, as a man, not look at a woman and go, she's achieved this. I feel that I could also achieve that.
Yeah.
Which presumably is what it said.
Like I remember seeing the film Ray when I was younger and being really just amazed at. I didn't know anything about Ray Charles and just amazed, and bought loads of his music and started trying to imitate him on the piano. I mean, maybe that was cultural appropriation, though, Tom. I don't know. But I don't know. But or you could imitate the sanctity of holy men like St. Augustine. But again, different race. So
Augustine was a barber, wasn't he? He was,
I think Berber. Barber is somebody who
someone who does your beard. It's nonsense, isn't it? It doesn't require that. It's quite clear that we can all celebrate the achievements of all of the human race, and I do quite happy to celebrate the achievements of the Lionesses. If it wasn't,
come on, Tom. This is a psyop, though, isn't it? The whole thing. I'm willing to say, like, football itself is a psyop. It's a weakness in me that I still find it interesting, and I'm to a certain extent irritated with myself that I still retain such an interest. But it is. I mean, I can't help but be interested.
It's a bit strange, really, isn't it?
It is a psyop because really, what we should be focusing on is God's will for our life, prayer, discipleship, holiness, doing acts of charity, friendship, those kind of things, and football can have a place in it. But this kind of this situation where football becomes this sort of idol around which we orientate our lives, it's not a good thing.
It's sort of pseudo religious. In fact, this whole idea of it, because the church does work like that. We sort of idolize Christ and worship Christ and become better people because we follow what Christ did. Yes.
And you can't idolize Christ, though, can you? I mean, Christ is God. So.
Okay. I know. But you know what I mean.
Yeah. Worship
Christ. It's not an idol, so it's not idolizing. You're right. And there's a sense in which his example is. Both satisfaction, oblation, it saves us, and it's something to follow. This has been transferred to other things, isn't it? So football now, are icons in football, but it's all over the place, isn't it? It's just sort of people frantically searching for a hero, but they won't find one.
Yeah,
they won't find one.
They'll let you down. They'll miss the penalties, and then they'll break your heart. And
is that what happened? I don't really know. I think they just lost straight out, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I didn't watch it, and
I think it was 1-0, wasn't it? Was it 1-0? I don't know.
Yeah. The other thing as well, I think about this whole thing is like from a Christian perspective, it's like we need to evaluate these new things when they come into our lives. Women's football hasn't been around for very long. I mean, I'm sure women have been playing football for a while, but it's only been in the last few years that it started to be promoted by like the BBC and by Sky and everything like that. And we've got to ask ourselves as disciples of Christ, is this really something that we want to give our time to? Is it really the right thing to do to pick up another interest and
that's a little bit
devoting your time and devotion to it?
That's a little bit harsh. I mean, in a sense that you're sitting there. Have you made that assumption about football? Have you decided that? I don't know.
I've just said to you, I think football is a psyop, and that I should be less interested in it than I am. I think it's okay to have some interest, but it's just like it's just because the media says, "Oh yeah, this is a big deal now. Let's all pay attention to it."
So I agree. It's
concerning.
It's entirely manufactured and quite irritating for that. And it doesn't. If it was as good as everyone made it out to be, it wouldn't need that sort of over kind of fawning response from the media. It just wouldn't need it because people watch it anyway. But there was a hilarious article in the Telegraph the day just released hours, I think it's gone now, hours before they lost, saying this was going to change the world. set the world on light.
And they're quietly taking it down.
Well, I just can't find it anymore. It's just quite funny.
I did put in the show notes that article in the Telegraph about all these virtue signalling politicians. You've got Ed Davey, who is apparently the leader of the Liberal Democrats. He's pretending to celebrate England's World Cup semi-final win at the pub. He's shaking his fist, like doing this gesture as though anyone's ever done that when they've celebrated a goal in football. A single fister. He looks like he's trying to chase off the local lads who are messing around with his bins. I think the writer said, Tom Gibbs. He's actually quite funny, Tom Gibbs. And there's also some stuff about how Rishi Sunak tweeted, "Time to make history. Let's do this," at Lionesses. And he's written, what did he write about that? That was quite a funny comment. Oh yeah. Rishi Sunak tweeted before Wednesday's semi-final, "Time to make history. Let's do this." Words you simply cannot imagine him saying. Better than his last visit to the team he supposedly supports, waving at well-wishers and watching Southampton being relegated. They also talk about when, David Cameron said that he supports Aston Villa, and then at one stage he said he made a mistake and said he supported West Ham. He forgot who he said he supported, because he's obviously not a genuine football fan. But it's all manufactured, Tom. It's all just people jumping on the bandwagon.
Yep.
Let's just listen to the end of this clip, shall we? See if they say anything outrageous.
Little girls,
right?
That they see someone that they can relate to.
Exactly. It makes such a difference. That little girl might then end up playing football because she's seen someone who looks like her.
But it doesn't detract.
It's fashionable to knock men, but if this was a man, it would be.
It doesn't actually say what it finishes there. It's really important, Tom, that little girls see pictures of women playing football and then they can play football too. That's what's important in life. Yes. Have you got time to talk about another story?
Yeah, go on then.
Okay, so this one is important. UK, so this is in the Telegraph as well, by Air Nulsol. UK birth slump, dubbed good for planet as number of babies born hits 20-year low. So a former government advisor has said that this is a good thing. It's good for our planet. Let's see, what are the statistics. Her comments came after official figures from the Office for National Statistics show that there were 605,479 live births in England and Wales last year, the lowest number since 2002. It's down 3.1% compared to 2021. The average number of children born to women in this country is recovered slightly from 1.58 in the first year of COVID to 1.61 in 2021. So essentially, we're not replacing ourselves in this country because the birth rate is so low.
You need to have 2.1, don't you?
Yeah, you need to have over 2. Yeah. So Professor Harper says, "I think it's a good thing that the high-income, high-consuming countries of the world are reducing the number of children they're having. I'm quite positive about that." The academic said declining fertility in rich countries would help to address, quote, "the general overconsumption that we have at the moment, which has a negative impact on the planet. We will see smaller populations in high-income countries going forward. It's just going to be a trend of the 21st century. And that will actually be good for a general overall consumption that we have at the moment and our planet." So there we go, Tom. Humanity is a cancer upon the earth. It needs to be reduced. Save the planet.
I mean, it's not a Christian way of looking at children, is it? And also, it's a rather silly, short-sighted way of looking at children, because she might be all right. I don't know how old she is, but if we don't, it's pointed out in the comments, I think, or somewhere I saw somewhere that okay, so if the indigenous Western population starts not reproducing itself, we're going to decline, obviously, and but first we will have many more older people than we have younger people. That's what happens. So it tilt more and more that way, and unless you then bring in younger people from elsewhere to keep the economy going, the economy will just collapse and everyone will die. We'll just starve. We'll go back to the Middle Ages.
But that would be good as well, because then we just know people.
Which means that it's just misanthropy, isn't it? It's just human hatred, and also the UK's population is minute compared to other countries, and the problem with overconsumption arguably is is not so much overconsumption as producing enough food to not make sure the people who are poor don't starve. And our population is not going to have any real impact on that. We're not going to suddenly balloon. It's just sort of irritating, isn't it? Who on earth did they find? Which misanthropic lecturer decided this? Top demographics expert. Well,
she's in Oxford Institute, the population.
Professor Sarah Harper. She's been given a CBE. Don't know why, because she obviously hates our country.
What a terrible name for an institute as well. Oxford Institute of Population Aging. It's just terrible. Can't they think of a better name than that? Yeah, no, I agree. Theological issues.
You could quote a psalm, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could quote Psalm 8. But I was just going to say that it's like, the Christian view of humanity is that humanity is specially created in the image of God, and as such, we are called to reflect. We are to be God's kind of vice regents, like a reflection of God, image of God here on the planet, which includes our being stewards of the planet and having dominion over it, and so on and so forth. And generally speaking, Christians have thought that if there are more humans, then that's better and that's good, and that's actually fulfilling God's mandate for us on this planet. So it's kind of a reversal of that, isn't it? Saying, well, actually humans are bad for the planet. We need to have less of them. And it just diminishes the importance and the significance of human beings by implying or saying quite obviously that there should be fewer human beings. And it sort of also feeds into that sense of depopulation being a good thing. And, people are very worried about this. Lots of people are very worried about this, that there already is an agenda to create depopulation by whatever means. But also thinking about where this could lead in the future in terms of that impulse becoming stronger and leading to terrible things. And I don't think it's outside the realms of possibility that things could go in that direction. Should that Christian understanding of mankind as made in the image of God be completely lost and overturned.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's what happens when we throw away the wisdom of God and replace it with our own flawed and foolish wisdom.
Is she even very wise? I don't think so. But anyway,
no, of course, and it's part of it's the ideology of climate change and and this is why it's not a neutral scientific issue. There are metaphysical and religious and theological questions that are relevant to it, and if we just throw them all away and say, we've got to reduce the population in order to reduce climate change, then that's got really serious religious and theological and societal implications if you start saying things like that. So, but I think, Tom, I've been very clear about it.
You have.
It's another psyop. Everything's a psyop.
It sounds like James Denipole now. Anyway,
I find it quite funny to just call everything a psyop, no matter how innocuous. Like the other day, I was telling people, those little those flaps in the dishwasher. Yep. You don't need to actually put your washing machine tablet in the flap. You can just chuck it in the dishwasher. I'm sure you know this already because you're a very clued up person. Because literally all that is like it just opens during the cycle.
This is a timer, yeah. I mean,
yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so I just say, like, it's just another psyop. They're just getting you to do it for no reason. They're getting you to put that little tablet in that little drawer, literally for no reason. It's just like they're just messing with you, Tom. They're messing with your mind. Just put the tablet straight in. I just chuck it straight in now.
I like putting it in the little drawer, Jamie.
Yeah, that's it. You're so conditioned. They've got you just where they want you, Tom.
Have they? There's literally nothing wrong with the little drawer. It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, you're neat. Lulled into a false sense of security by that little drawer, and by you're putting that little tablet in there, you just think, yeah, life is so good, everything is fine. But that's what they want you to think.
Do they?
It's a psyop. All right, one more story, Tom. You just tell me when you need to go. But I just wanted to flag this up because this is something I've been aware of for quite a long time. Because somebody who used to work in the pharmaceutical industry, who doesn't anymore, told me about this kind of thing. But it's in The Independent. Ex-medical chief Jonathan Van Tam takes job with COVID vaccine giant Moderna.
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, of course.
Move may spark fresh questions over, quote, revolving door between government and business. And as I say, it just caught my eye because I had a conversation with this bloke who used to work in Big Pharma ages ago now. It must have been about 2 years ago. But he said to me that this happens all over the world, that you have a situation where not only do people go from government to, Moderna or wherever, but they go from Big Pharma to government, and they go backwards and forwards several times in their career. And it actually says that somewhere in this article about these people going backwards and forwards. So Rose Whiffin says there are only threadbare safeguards against abuse of the revolving door between the public and private sector, a risk of privileged information being misused for commercial benefit.
Well, of course, they wouldn't ever do that, would they? They wouldn't ever.
Well, yeah, and the other point to make about this is kind of human nature, isn't it? If you're in Big Pharma and you are trying to sell vaccines or other products, and then you go into government and you're in an advisory role, and so you've been in that world, and you think maybe one day I might want to go back into it in the same way as Jonathan Van Tam is. It's only human nature that you're going to have a certain way of looking at that world, and you're going to be favorably disposed towards those products.
Yeah, because if you weren't, then they would quite clearly, you
wouldn't be going back in, would you?
Wouldn't be going back in. They wouldn't let you back in again if you said, I don't really, want you to take this,
Yeah,
it shouldn't be really. It should some way be found to stop this.
Well, because it would be like you just can't you just can't have a government post if you had a job with a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the most straightforward way of doing it, wouldn't it? I suppose. Yep. Maybe I'm just too simplistic.
I think they'd just do it the other way around, then, wouldn't they? I don't know.
What do you mean? What, the other way around? Meaning what?
They'd go from government to the farmer, wouldn't they? They'd still, if a nice post was available, they'd still be
I see what you mean.
Open to corruption in government, wouldn't they? So, I mean, really, you need to forbid them from any. I don't know how you do it. If high civil servants basically forbidden from working.
Yeah, it would be hard, wouldn't it?
You'd have to just pay them a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here we are. Transparent International UK found that nearly a third of all new jobs taken by former ministers and senior officials had a significant overlap with their previous brief.
Yeah.
So there needs to be apparently called for a radical overhaul of the process for approving former ministers' new jobs, saying appointments show the current system was not fit for purpose. It sounds actually quite perspicacious from Labour there. So
yeah, but they just want to, basically put their own cronyism in instead, don't they? But anyway, says the cynic.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're probably right, Tom. You're probably right. I mean, I've got no faith in any of these people, but it just shows you how. I just thought it's important to talk about these kind of things occasionally, because it just shows you how close the ties are between government and industry here, and how there is a financial agenda which has a huge influence on what goes on in government and more generally in society.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, indeed.
Good. Well, it's been a pleasure, Jamie.
You're going to go.
I think I'll probably have to go shortly. Is there a question on the rev we can do quickly?
Yeah, there is a question on the rev. I'll do the rest of it after you've gone. But yeah, if you're around for the question on the rev, let's do that.
Let's do a question on the rev. Yeah.
And let me get I've got to get the sound, Tom, though. I'm going to have the sound, which I never have ready, and I don't. So here we go. It starts quiet. Here we go. Once again, Tom, it's time for Question the Rev with you and me, the two revs on this irreverent. And I'm just going to stop that there because we're in a rush. Not a rush, but don't want to waste your time. Not that it's a waste of time listening to that lovely music. Anyway, good morning, Jamie. I'm sure it means you as well. I'm an older fellow who has found his way back to God after having led a secular sort of life. I won't bore you with a how or why, other than to say it has nothing whatsoever to do with my having had my 3 school years in 10. I've been reading the Bible and having gone through the first 5 chapters of the Old Testament, the 4 Gospels, it's obvious to me that I need a Bible study guide. I have a KJV and my daughter's old illustrated RSV from her school days, which is useful for comparison. Would it be useful to inquire an NIV as well? I've been to church a couple of times, but to be honest, I have reservations, as you do, about the archbishops and bishops. My background is Scots Presbyterian and my wife's is Methodist. I have not yet decided what church is right for me, brackets us, but I do like and value tradition. What Bible study guide would you recommend? Keep up the good podcast, kind regards, etc.
Well, it's so hard to recommend a Bible study guide because, what is he looking to do? I mean, I've got...
Study the Bible.
Well, in which case, Matthew...
Understand the Bible.
Matthew Henry's. For traditional, kind of old-fashioned, complete treatise on the whole Bible.
Right. Have you got that?
Matthew? Actually, I don't. I use an online one. I'd like to have it.
Yeah.
So I always go to it, though. It's a really good sort of concise way of just looking at sort of an orthodox way of. It's before all of sort of Protestant liberalism came in, all that sort of stuff. But it's
yeah.
I quite like it. I've been enjoying a set of studies which are called, which basically assemble quotes from the fathers of the church.
Oh yeah, ancient Christian commentaries.
That's the one, ancient Christian commentaries.
Yeah,
and but again, like it's sort of, I'd recommend them thoroughly, but to require a full set, you'd need about £1,000. You know, it's not. They're about.
I think it's a bit of an exaggeration. There were like 29 of them, and they're like what, 30 quid each.
If you multiply those together,
yeah, actually, it's almost £1,000.
So the question comes like, what are you looking for? I've got an NIV study Bible with an older NIV, and that's quite good.
Is that the Life Application Study Bible? I've got one of those.
I don't know where it's got to at the moment. It's in the other room, I think, from where I was leading a study group. But it's I had an NRSV study Bible which I took to Cuddeston, and then it miraculously turned into this really battered copy of the NIV study Bible somehow. I don't really know how.
Maybe it was the Holy Spirit.
Maybe it was the Holy Spirit.
Less heretical.
It's a miracle.
Translation.
Anyway, I've stuck with it.
I think the ESV study Bible is really good. We've got one of those, and that's so the difference between something like Matthew Henry and like something like that, or like probably your NIV study Bible, just for our listeners' information, is that there you'd get like shorter notes on specific passages. So you sort of read the Bible, and then at the bottom of the page there'd be sort of shorter notes on specific passages, which would just give you some insight. There'd be, you know, introductions to the books, maps, things like that. So I think the best one that I'm aware of, the kind of contemporary one, is the ESV study Bible, which is very good, and the ESV is a good translation as well. I'm just trying to think of what else I might recommend. I was going to say the ancient Christian commentaries because I think they're very good. I've been talking to Nick Dixon recently, who's been using David Pawson's Unlocking the Bible. So there's a book called Unlocking the Bible, and there are YouTube videos of David Pawson doing lectures, which are very good. I mean, Pawson is he's like a low church evangelical.
So the classic. There's an Oxford Bible commentary which is pretty decent. Do you have that one, Jamie?
No. No, I don't think I do. No. And I've got the IVP one, one volume commentary on the Bible. That's quite good. But just to say, sorry to finish this thing about Pawson, I think we're going to say something about is just that those videos are really good. Those YouTube videos are really worth listening to, as like introductions and kind of overviews of the Bible, biblical books. I think they're really good. And although I wouldn't, I don't share his sort of particular understanding of the church, I think generally speaking, they're very, very good. And he was an excellent. Have you ever listened to him, Tom?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, he's really listenable. There's something really pleasurable. He was from, I think he was from Yorkshire, and he hasn't got a strong accent. He's just got a little kind of slightly inflected accent, which is really pleasant to listen to. So I'd say I'd recommend that as well. It's quite a good one.
Good, yeah.
So
well, there's some good things to get started with. In terms of church, my main advice would be to stop mucking around and just go somewhere. Find somewhere that's at least, teaches, the scriptures faithfully, and stay there. It won't be perfect.
Yeah. What you should do, Tom?
Go.
You should use the Reverend Church Finder on our podcast on our website. It sounded like a person who didn't understand the internet then. On our website, irreverendpod.com, go on Church Finder and see if there are any churches that have been recommended near you. And then you can find one and visit. If you're near us, which you might be, come and visit our churches. But yeah, you're right, Tom. You just go to church. I mean, not a heretical church, not where they're preaching heresy, but somewhere where there's a faithful minister of some sort. It's important, isn't it? You want to be.
It really is important. But just don't muck around. Just go to church.
I don't know. Is mucking around? Is that a bit harsh?
No, I know. Well, I know. But some people. I mean, C.S. Lewis cautions against this in Screw Tape, doesn't he? The kind of search for the perfect church. You think, well, actually, just go to church.
Yeah, just go to church. Yeah, exactly. Use our church finder. That's why it's there. Yes. Okay. Do you want to do some emails, or
go on then? I got time for one email.
I keep on threatening that you're going to go, but you never do.
I've got about another 5 minutes. So
okay. So the lady Nancy, who emailed to say about the reviews we've missed, emailed again, and there's some more stuff about just how many reviews we've got, which are really, really great. But then she said at the end, on the subject of Prague and the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, which we read about last week, the church actually glorified Bishop Gorzadst as a saint out of all of that, but not for violence. The perpetrators of the assassination hid in his cathedral. When he found out about it, he tried to get them out of there to protect his flock. But before he could, they were discovered. He was arrested and tried to take the blame upon himself for everything. He willingly gave up his life, so he was martyred. But of course, the Nazis didn't stop there. ... By the way, the Orthodox Church doesn't believe that war can be just. They do believe that war is sometimes inevitable, but require anyone who kills someone else, even in self-defense, to refrain from receiving communion for a period of time, not short, simply because of the horribleness of taking life. So they believe that no taking of life can ever be labelled just, but always involves sin. I didn't know that, Tom.
Sorry, I was
just going to make the point. I wonder how they square that with the death penalty as it's articulated in scripture in various different places. I mean, it seems to me that the Bible clearly implies that there's a difference between murder and killing, at least a sort of theoretical difference. So I'd be interested in the answer to that question.
Yeah, it'd be. I mean, Orthodox Church would be. I know Rodrea tried to convince me on this the other last time I met him. But
how many times have you met someone?
Once.
Last time was the only time.
I met him a couple of times over a day. No, over that day.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And in the pub, he tried to convince me that I should be an Orthodox Christian. Almost, I could almost do it. We've got the right beards for it, Jamie. We could.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would be the natural. I mean, if I were not to be an Anglican, I'd definitely look into Orthodoxy, I think.
Yeah.
And if for nothing else than a beard. Also, I've got an Orthodox study Bible. That's something I didn't mention, which is always interesting to kind of dip into and have a look and see. There was very mystical interpretations. So anyway, so it's interesting, isn't it? Apparently they don't have a just war tradition in the Eastern Orthodox Church. So, but as people have got very excised about that. I've had lots of comments about people saying, that you and me are wrong about what we said about war.
Probably.
That we need to change our minds. To which I say, no, I will not change my mind.
No, I will if someone convinces me.
I'll change my mind if I'm wrong.
But as all these things, it tends to be an interpretative thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
I think we were quite subtle about it, actually.
Yeah. I think we were very nuanced.
Yeah, nuanced.
Another person who I'm not going to say because he forbids me. So his first name's James, but he forbids me from saying his surname. He says, I'm not sure if this is worthy of comment on the podcast, but I was a little surprised to see in my local Sainsbury's a new magazine on the occult and another new magazine on witchcraft. It struck a note with me as you've recently been saying about the background of evil, which is progressively getting worse. Keep up the good work, etc. Now, I do have this email up here, so I'm just going to... Oh, wait a minute. That's somebody sent me another email, Tom. So many emails. Green witchcraft. Green witchcraft. Interesting, isn't it? Green witchcraft, Tom. What does that say? Attune yourself to Mother Nature. Interesting. And then the other magazine is right next to Doctor Who magazine is a history of the occult. So there you go. Oh, and the Green Witchcraft is right next to Railway Modeler, which is a magazine my son would like. Hopefully he wouldn't grab the wrong one and then become obsessed with Green Witchcraft.
Cult.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, Tom. Well, I'll let you go. I'll do it. I'm plug at the end and sign off. But
thank you, Jamie. God bless you. Nice to chat.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, have a good day. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
So Tom's gone now, and that was good to have him, wasn't it? So now what I'm going to say is that if you've enjoyed this podcast, I thank you very much for listening. Thank you for getting to this point in the podcast. Now, this podcast is supported by our listeners. We don't have any adverts. We do have the adverts turned on YouTube, but that makes almost no money, and it's hopefully very, very little inconvenience for people who watch this show. But essentially, I live off the money I make from this podcast, as well as a couple of other things. I'm not paid for being a vicar. I'm a part-time vicar. I am given a house, but I don't have any money for being a vicar. I earn money through doing this podcast, through doing my Substack blog, jamiefranklin.substack.com, and through doing a couple of other things which bring in some income. So essentially, this podcast is financed by you, the listener and viewer, not just for me, but for the overheads and the money that we need to run the podcast. So please, if you like this podcast, maybe you've been listening recently and you haven't done this yet, please do consider supporting us by going to our website at revpod.com and becoming a Patreon. Now, if you become a Patreon, you will get the episodes early, and we also, most weeks, although we're not doing it this week because of time constraints, but most weeks we put out an extra episode called Uncollared, where we chat about stuff to do with our lives, and maybe go in depth about other things that we wouldn't normally talk about. Maybe talk about things that are slightly more edgy because it's for a more limited audience. But we put that out most weeks, almost every week, Uncollared. So everyone who subscribes gets that, and you can subscribe for as little as £1.50 plus VAT in the UK per month, £1.50 per month. So we're talking about a very, very small amount of money to support us. And that really does make a difference, even if it's for a small amount. If you have slightly more money, you might think, well, they put out 4 or 5 episodes a month, and maybe they're worth, £2.50 to me an episode. Maybe you might like to sponsor us for £10 a month. Maybe you might like to think, well, I'll give an hour of my income to a reverend. How much money do I make in an hour? Can I spare that per month to support these guys in what they're doing? So please do consider that, because it makes such a difference. And it's also just so encouraging when I see people signing up to support us and to help us with what we're doing. As you could hear at the beginning of the show when I read out those reviews from Buy Me a Coffee, these podcasts really are reaching people and helping people, and we believe in what we're doing here. So if you believe that what we're doing is good as well, and it's producing fruit, please do consider supporting us. So go to revpod.com and click on the red button just slightly down the page which says to support us on Patreon, and become a Patreon today. We'd really, really, really appreciate that. If you don't want to do that, you don't want to support us monthly, you can buy us a coffee, like I was talking about earlier. It's in the same place. It's a yellow button. You just click Buy Me a Coffee. You can leave us a message if you like, which we read all the messages, and they're hugely encouraging. And you can just leave us a one-off donation. So we don't actually get a real coffee. We could use the money to buy coffee if we wanted, but essentially it's just a way of supporting us. You can also look at my Substack, jamiefranklin.substack.com, which is called Good Things. And I try and write about good things, interesting things, things in my life personally that I like to share with people. And again, you could subscribe there for a very, very low amount of cash. I actually forget how much it is. I think it's sort of £5 a month or something like that to subscribe there. So there's lots of things you can do to support this podcast. But essentially, thank you for even just listening, to be honest, because the fact that people listen to this sort of feels like a miracle. And the fact that people are helped by it is, it's hugely encouraging and gratifying. So anyway, hope that was a good time for you. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I enjoyed making it. And the sign off, which I always forget, which is until next time, keep watch and keep the faith. Bye now.